Welcome to And It's Live, the podcast which dives deep into football's most iconic seasons, stories, and what ifs. If you love football, history, tactics, and nostalgia, make sure to subscribe, hit the bell, and drop us a like on YouTube so you don't miss an episode. Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the main event in the history of the Champions League. We are in the final part of our look back at 2008-2009, a very famous and consequential Champions League win, I think, in the history of the game. We've got to look at the semi-finals and the final tonight. I'm joined, as always, by my good friend Adam Thornton. How are you doing?
Good, thank you. Yeah, some really good games in here for the semis, and obviously we've got the final, which I'm sure won't be pleasant for Rob, but we'll try our best to pick through it respectfully.
He's a masochist, it's okay. David, plenty to get into tonight. Some of the game's greatest players, some fantastic goals, and Tom Henning Ovrebo makes a mark as well.
He does indeed. I think we actually, in these 5 matches, I think we've got everything tonight. I really do. I think you've got, if you like tension, if you like games that go to the wire, we've got that. If you like tactical brilliance, we've got that. If you like individual brilliance, we've got that. Every one of these 5 matches tonight tells a story, and I think it is representative of modern elite football. I think that you could not take your eyes off any of these 5 matches for a second, and that's exactly how it should be.
Rob Smyth is back. How are we, Rob? Looking forward to this.
This is 67-68 we're doing, right? Looking forward to what you all think about the final, because I find it genuinely fascinating, this final, as opposed to the next one, which was just
doing
2011. Oh yeah.
Yeah, the next Barcelona United.
2010. I mean, I've got 60 minutes in 2010. Again, second year in a row, 3 Premier League teams in the semi-finals. The stranglehold of the game feels to be going in that direction. We just come off the back of an all-English final. Let's start with the all-English semi then. Arsenal United. Rob, I'm keen to get your thoughts on this, because I remember quite viscerally quite a few bits and pieces around these games. Podcasts really were now part of your week. The Guardian Football Weekly, of course, which you were on often. The Times had the game, I think, with Gab Marcotti, Rory Smith, and a few others. And my memory is certainly that Arsenal-Chelsea was the favoured final. This was what most people felt would happen. Certainly a lot of belief in Arsenal to do the business over United for some reason. I think there's maybe a wish fulfillment maybe there. They wanted Wenger to have this particular success. I don't know if that plays a part. Your memory of the build-up anyway before we get into the games.
Yeah, I think that's probably fair, and I think wish fulfillment's a good point. United restored a bit of order after that kind of really, really wobbly spell around kind of March, early April. But Arsenal, at this point, they didn't have a hold over Arsenal. Arsenal had beaten them earlier in the season, 2-1 at the Emirates. A genuinely brilliant game of football. That could have been, 6-4 to Arsenal, whatever. So, and their record against United was good, like really good, actually, even though United had pulled away from them in broader terms. The head-to-head was still really tight. And I think, I don't remember personally, I don't remember Arsenal being favourites, but I remember thinking, 2 years down the line, Arsenal for United would almost become a joke of a game when it mattered, because United would just sit and pick them off. But at this stage, that absolutely wasn't the case. So I think it was seen as kind of close to 50-50.
First leg, Old Trafford, 1-0 win. John O'Shea, I think, popping up with that goal. Your memories of the 90 minutes as a whole should have been more?
Yeah, what's interesting, Almunia, who obviously gets a lot of stick, I'm pretty sure he was possibly the official and certainly the unofficial man in the match in that game. But what's interesting is that we think now, and we'll talk about the second leg of the whole kind of a slightly kind of rope-a-dope on steroids, United against Arsenal, But in the first leg, they really pinned them in. So he'd come across a template of a midfield of Carrick, Anderson and Fletcher. And this is when Anderson was generally really good. Fletcher, I think, was personally as good as any midfielder of his type in the world for 18 months. And this was slap bang in the middle of that. And they really, really pinned Arsenal back, which didn't happen a lot to Arsenal, given how many ball players they had. O'Shea scored quite a smart finish after a bit of a ricochet, but they could have had more. I actually think 1-0 felt okay because, going back, Ferguson used to always say before European games at home, we'll take 1-0 because obviously you've got a goal, we haven't conceded. That said, of course, they'd lost 2-1 at the Emirates, which would put them through, but, it still felt nervous. I remember it was like a beautiful early evening. I remember feeling proper butterflies, but they did really dominate the first leg. And I think that's actually been forgotten because of how rampant they were at times in the seconds and how rampant one self-loving individual was in particular.
Yeah. Adam, I think when I go back to that, it's going to be an Arsenal-Chelsea final. I think where that memory comes from is probably in between these two legs. We'll get to Chelsea-Barcelona in a moment, but that was 0-0 in the Nou Camp. So I think a lot of pundits will say, the two away teams are not out of it. They win at home. They win enough at home. And I remember thinking, but they don't have an away goal. Neither of them have got an away goal. This isn't. They don't have the whip hand here. I think this is a kind of bizarre take, and a very British take, to be honest, because we just seem to ignore away goals, even in 2009, as a real dangerous thing to have in the pocket. And I'll be honest, I did fancy the final that we eventually got. The second leg, it was built up, and Sky really did build it. It was good. This is, United Arsenal, as Rob will know, by this point have a huge narrative and rivalry. These two managers do. We've seen what's happened with two English clubs meeting at this kind of stage again. This is over very quickly. Kieran Gibbs, bless him, that
19 years old, really sad.
That falls and Park Ji-sung is available to make them pay, and that's that. The tie's kind of over, and then Ronaldo takes over.
He does. I think I agree with you. I really liked Man United this year, and I thought of anyone, it would be them that I would prefer to have in the final for sure. Even though 2 years before I was definitely on the Arsene Wenger train, like we said off air there, there's only a few teams where you see just the immediate decline right away, and I don't remember thinking, even at this stage, I know we were trailing it a couple of years ago, and I'm sure 2006 final we were a little bit harsh in terms of expecting decline coming, but I think that's a sort of post thing. I don't remember at this time thinking there's going to be such a big decline, even when you look through the teams and you think United have got the better players in pretty much every position here. I still don't know if that's a hindsight thing or not. The first leg, I thought Silvestre was horrendous. Really, really bad. Tevez completely dominated them, but I think it just summed up everything that Man United were and everything that Arsenal weren't. That slick counter-attack for the goal at the Emirates that you mentioned there. They've got the depth with Rooney, Tevez, Ronaldo. Completely 100% agree with Rob's point about Fletcher, and I think while it might not be the decisive factor for the final, I think the sending off it definitely plays a part. It's a crucial thing, because I agree with Rob. I remember being really, really surprised at how good he was for them at this time. They just had it. They had it all, I think, at this stage. That really solid midfield with Carrick and Fletcher, like I said, devastating attack. Yeah, so for me, I don't think I was really surprised. I think it summed up sort of the styles of both teams and this physicality that was making its way to the Premier League first of all, and would then go everywhere else a little while later. I think it summed up United having it and Arsenal not, basically.
It's worth saying that first leg, Tevez plays, Rooney and Ronaldo play sort of wide, so it's the old three. Excuse me. Second leg, Park plays, Rooney plays wide, Ronaldo plays up front, and he kind of does a Drogba on Arsenal, really. He just absolutely monsters them in every way. Scores a free kick from like it's just absurd. It's 40 yards. So in the quarterfinal and the semi-final, he literally scored from 40 yards. I cannot imagine that has ever been done before. I know Armenia should maybe do better, but if you look at the way it's whooshing all over the place,
this is the point. Yeah, it's the point I want to raise. I'll ask you, Davey, because you know, I don't get. I get quite annoyed that goals aren't allowed to be scored anymore without fault somewhere. Goalkeepers are always at fault for goals, it would appear, and the slowed down replay, it doesn't look good for Almunia, and he does have a bit of a reputation, to be honest, as a bit of a Rick. In real time, though, that it's an exercise. I mean, I think it's harsh.
Yeah, Rob nailed it there with that's the word I would use. It's the audacity. He's not expecting it, and no bloody wonder. And yeah, if you slow it down, could Almunia have done a bit better? Possibly. Should he have been expecting it? I think that's post rationalisation.
Yeah,
I didn't expect it. And again, to Adam's point last week about sometimes you have to say when you know the ending. Was it, it can look inevitable. So now when you look back on these highlights and you know the goal's coming, you're not really looking at Ronaldo anymore, are you? You're looking at Almunia and go, I should know. I didn't know he was going to hit that from there. It's an outrageous thing to attempt at this level of the game. Now, another thing is that people might say, well, Ronaldo famously hits free kicks from everywhere. He didn't then. This wasn't something that there was not this thing about his free kick. So no, I totally agree. I felt to your point, Martin, about who the favourites were and the way that people were talking this up. I kind of felt that, with the exception of that front three, this United team aren't glamorous. This Arsenal team is glamorous. It's absolutely packed full of skillful ball players who can do really incredible things, intricate, lovely flowing moves that genuinely nobody else in the Premier League is capable of. Nobody plays the way that this Arsenal team did, and when it worked, I mean, they used to dominate goal of the month. Remember, they would have these little PlayStation goals that would go in, but they were always like the 6-1 of a win against a team that were struggling. It was never in these really big matches. I never took to this Arsenal side for that, and I had loved, the Arsenal team that Wenger first had, even the one he built, the Invincibles. I never took to this one. There was something I felt transient about them, that they never really felt to me like a side who could impose themselves in the game. And as I say, I don't like teams that say, well, we're not good at this, so we don't bother with it. That's not how this works. Any job you have to do things you don't like. And I love this United team because, to me, it wasn't trying to be something it wasn't. It was everyone, right? They had this phenomenal front line, and you'd pay money to see any one of the three of them, never mind the three of them in combo. But then the guys behind them, every one of them knew what they were doing. They knew what their job was, where they were supposed to be. They would put themselves... they would suffer for these front three, who would also work hard, by the way. I just thought that the balance was there. I thought the composure was there. I did think Chelsea would beat Barcelona. I'll hold my hands up to that. But I did think United would beat this Arsenal team, because I thought United are a more grown-up side. And I thought when it came down to over two legs, they would have... The way they did it, though, in the second leg was so impressive, because, like I say, it felt like... To me, this was a tactical equivalent of a grown-up playing with a toddler, and it was just, you let them run about for a bit, then you take the ball off them and smash it into the wee goal that you've got in your back garden. That was what Man United did. To me, that they were levels away. I don't doubt for a second that if you'd been playing cage football, the Arsenal lads might have got a bigger score, but when it came to actual... we need to win this game and get through, there was a hunger, and there was a sense in this United side of, I'm sorry, but this is our territory, and you're just playing it belonging here, whereas we absolutely do belong here. But the way they did it, I thought, even as a non-Man United fan, was thrilling in its own way. Not in the way of a 5-0 where it's fantastic, but just in a mature, sensible... they walked into that ground like they owned it, and as somebody who admired United when Cantona was there for that, it was almost a throwback to that era of collar up, chest puffed out, this is our arena.
I feel like there was
Rob,
a wee
no,
bit
you-
of... Sorry, Martin, I just want to jump in there. I feel there's maybe, I don't know, Rob will absolutely know this as well, but is there a little bit of Fergie magic kicking about here as well, particularly around Tevez? Because again, we focus on the Champions League, but United are going deep in this Premier League battle at this point as well. They're only a few points ahead of Liverpool, and Liverpool have just salvaged a draw against Arsenal. I think Torres scores in the 90 whatever it is minute. 1-0. United are 1-0 up at home to Spurs. He brings Tevez on for Nani at half time, and Tevez is absolutely ridiculous against Spurs. And Ferguson then gives him the platform in that game, the first leg of the Champions League, to go and dominate Silvestre in there as well. So there's maybe a little bit there, because not playing Berbatov at this time, I think, was a shock, certainly, for me. Albeit you can talk about, in my head, I'm thinking Rooney, Tevez, Ronaldo probably makes more sense. That's what I would like to play. But there's a wee bit of Fergie magic there, just getting 45 minutes out of somebody that helps you on at the weekend in your title race, and then giving them the jersey to go when they're absolutely buzzing, full of confidence and energy in a way that only really Tevez could be, and giving them that first leg as well. So I think there's a little bit of Fergie gold dust there as well, which we shouldn't understate.
Yeah, what I would say, so that every game, particularly in Europe, there's a bespoke formation. Like I said, he left Rooney out last week, left Rooney away to Inter. The only thing with Tevez is by then he had really pissed Tevez off, mainly by signing Berbatov, and I feel terrible saying this, because who would you rather be as a human being or a footballer? Dimitar Berbatov or Carlos Tevez? But Berbatov is one of Fergie's biggest mistakes, without doubt, because it disrupted the most exhilarating front three they probably ever had. And it pissed... And I think Tevez's performance is and look, I don't know this at all, we're not mates, are more down to his own innate kind of aggression and work rate and bronca, as Maradona put it, than anything else. But what I would say is Ferguson was really good at juggling, because first leg he wants to pin them in at home, so he plays Tevez up front, same midfield. Second leg is different. He knows they're going to sit and counter, so he puts Ronaldo up front. I just want to say one thing. I had a quick look at the goal, actually, the Ronaldo free kick while you were chatting, and while I totally agree with everything, no one had any right to expect it. Clive Tilsley famously says, who was a brilliant commentator, I think, too far out for Ronaldo. Oh, it's not, or something. But Vidic and Ferdinand don't go up. It's a crossing position, and they don't go up. So actually, it is there. But I agree that nobody could have expected. No way.
Very Barry Davis with Gascoigne.
Yeah, exactly.
He's not going to.
But it's even worse than that. I'm sure he says too far out for Ronaldo. Whoa!
Oh, yeah.
And just one thing, I think this is the night, kind of symbolically, when the greatest rivalry I've ever seen in English football ends. I think it starts in 1982-83 and it ends this night, because although it ends sort of when Keane and Vieira leave, the games are still really, really good. But this is the night when you realise they're just in different worlds now. And there's a kind of a disdain to United's performance. I think
that's the word I was searching for. There is a disdain. This is not. This is not a United side that are in any. There is not a doubt in this United side about what they're going to do to this Arsenal team.
And yet, well, I totally agree with all of that. Like, if a kid doesn't slip, and it's literally a slip, it's not a mistake.
Yeah.
In the same way that the final hinges on one moment really early. I think United would have done it anyway, but sometimes it can be even more persuasive because of a random moment early in a game. But I agree with you. And of course, they would do it again, even post Ronaldo. They did it the following year in the league. They won 3-1. They again scored a brilliant counter-attacking goal. This time, Rooney was the number 9 running riot. So, I think this is the moment, a kind of great rivalry, symbolically comes to an end. And someone should write a fucking book on that one day.
Yeah, we should. Rob, just a couple of questions. One on the Ronaldo free kick. He had been doing that this season.
Not from that distance. No, there've been the wobble.
The Portsmouth one, yeah. So it's the hitting the ball in that.
Oh no, the technique.
Absolute moment. Yeah,
it's
not right. Okay, that distance obscene. But Ronaldo being a free kick guy and the way that he's just moving that ball. Because the Portsmouth one was the Christmas,
previous,
wasn't it?
Previous Portsmouth one was closer. It was about sort of 25 yards right of centre, and that was the previous season. But it's same technique. Because it came to the point when Juninho, I think it's when Juninho scores against Barcelona, that Craig Doyle on ITV says he's copied the Ronaldo technique, something like that. So Ronaldo was known for the technique, but not that.
Not from that far out. The other question, the Berbatov Tevez thing that I posed on the show a couple of weeks ago, you weren't on.
I feel unclean.
Yeah. Is it possible that Ferguson, knowing the character that Carlos Tevez is, that he probably has that for a limited time, and you don't know when that's going to come to an end because he's a very, very volatile chap, and there's a bit of issues. I know what you mean about being a disruptor effectively and maybe setting fire to that fuse, but it possibly would be something or other not too far down the line. And Berbatov's a very classic player. Gives you a different option in different games.
It's a slightly cheap analogy, and I've said it to you before, but I think Berbatov, like Varane, was the equivalent of someone buying something really smart in a size too small that they swear they're going to fit into and they never do. And I think Ferguson wanted to. He's so obsessed with being accepted as a sophisticated manager, and I think he was desperate to win a Champions League in a way he never quite did, with more ball players, pretty much like Guardiola did. And I think he couldn't resist. And also, when Ferguson liked the player, and he'd liked Berbatov for a while, he would often take them. Now, Berbatov wasn't past his best, don't get me wrong, but when the circumstances weren't right. So a good example of that would be Laurent Blanc, who he had wanted for a long time and was just a bit too old. He almost took Ruud Gullit when he went to Chelsea, which I find fascinating because he just would not fit in that United team. So I think he was indulging his romantic, basically. And the problem is that in theory, you could make it work. But I think more than anything, it just marginalised and pissed Tevez off. Now, what I would say, Berbatov did have his moments. He actually played really well in Porto, had a pretty good game in Inter, away to Inter. And, the following 2 years later, they kind of win the league off the back of Berbatov's goals, really. There were great moments. Like, I had this phrase, Berberotica, for the things he used to do.
He was brilliant.
Touches and everything. The West Ham one is the famous one, where he kind of does that spin and flicks over. And I loved watching him, but I just think he unnecessarily, a bit like Varane, unnecessarily unbalanced the best part. Well, not necessarily the best part, but a key part of a great team.
I'll come back to Ferguson's romanticism in a minute and indulging that. Adam, Ronaldo scored 2 phenomenal goals. It's not my favourite Ronaldo goal of this tournament. You know what my favourite is? It's Mr. Sidney Poitier. No, the third tonight, the break. There's something about counter-attacking goals. I think they have a bad reputation for that negativity, sitting in, being reactive. There is something so devastating about how many touches are in that move when it breaks down. I think it's maybe Fletcher that breaks it. It is just lightning.
Before I did check this one. Vidic heads it away. 7 touches, 12 seconds. And just before Adam, Paul Hayward of the Telegraph had a great phrase, called it an ice hockey goal, which I think is absolutely lovely for the way the ball moves and the way everyone else moves around it. It's perfect.
Just do you prefer that, Adam, or blasting it from a million miles?
I 100% prefer this. Even the finish is a bit of a strange finish. He sort of stabs at it. It's not quite a chip, and it's not quite just a side foot, but he stabs at it and it just does enough to go over Almunia. He'd have probably went through Almunia anyway, given his expertise. But yeah, like I said on earlier on in this game, it sums up United. Where I think David mentioned there, they're getting to that point where they had the control in the middle of the pitch. We know Ferguson had been searching for control for a long, long time, and he had pretty much mastered it. But it was getting to that point there, but still that devastating ability on the counter-attack, like you said there. For a game like this to be, I was going to say in the balance. I never really felt like it was in the balance, but that goal was decisive. There's no doubt about that.
It's just so beautiful. It's just a cap on.
It's the way to do it. Yeah. It's just terrific, yeah.
David Arsenal did scored a penalty, but probably one of the key moments of the whole Champions League, Darren Fletcher's red card. You know my thoughts on this. It's a matter of judgment, not binary fact, but it was harsh and it was very consequential.
Yes, it was. And Rob is right when he said that for 18 months, Fletcher was as good at doing that specific role in a team as anyone was. It didn't last. It lasted a couple of seasons, but he's flying at this point in terms of his form, his reliability. And I think that for United to have to go with it, and particularly against the side that they played. Now, I'm not saying that Manchester United win that final if Darren Fletcher's playing. Of course I'm not. But it would have helped a great deal to have him there. He's superb in this match up to the red card, Darren Fletcher. Absolutely brilliant. It's harsh. Look, it is. It's harsh. Would VAR overturn that? We're going to talk about a game that would have been totally different had VAR been involved in it. But I don't necessarily think that. He's just really, really, really unlucky.
Too diligent for his own good.
Yeah, but
just
he was.
Score.
Yeah, that's it. Just done. Let him score. But he is so integral to this, and this is the great thing about Ferguson teams, that we all talk about the front three in this one, and Giggs and Scholes. There's always these unsung guys, but they're vital. They're absolute. They're the axle of the car, and he was tremendous at this point. Now you're up against an inspired side with some of the best players of all time coming up, and I'm not saying that putting Darren Fletcher in changes that whole match, but it changes it maybe enough. And that might sound odd when we're talking about Busquets and the Xavi, etc. But that extra 10% that United would have got, that extra stability, that extra defensive cover, but maybe more importantly, guys, Rob, I don't know what you think about this, even just the psychological factor of having him there. Instead, he's not there. It's on your mind of, it just changes your approach, the template, everything is slightly different, slightly off kilter. And it was huge, but I always say, let him go. Just let him go and score. He takes one for the team, but the team didn't need him.
Didn't need it. Didn't need the sacrifice. Rob?
He's the only one who could have stopped that passing carousel, basically. Whether he would have done, I don't know, but he was best equipped. But I agree with the psychological thing, because that had become a template, Carrick, Anderson, Fletcher. And at the time, and in hindsight, this looks absurd, but Barcelona was seen as just a better version of Arsenal by a lot of people.
Yeah.
Ferdinand argues by Ferguson as well, but you can debate that because Ferdinand, although a great centre-half, is kind of never at fault. So I don't know whether that's
for anything, yeah.
And it created problems along with other things, which we'll talk about. I think they missed him enormously. I still think Barcelona would have won the game, but I think it would have potentially been a lot closer.
Yeah, I think if he's there, and again, the belief that extra couple of percentage points belief that United have, the stability, but also just the settled nature of it. This is a team we played. We know what we can do. This is the front six. Do we know what everyone knows their job? You've got to then make a change, and it has knock on. It's butterfly effect, though, isn't it?
And he's on Iniesta's side. Iniesta was the man of the match, and Fletcher's energy was just ridiculous around that, as well as his intelligence. So he was massive. Missed more than I think most casual fans wouldn't appreciate, and we'll probably snigger at, but which I get. But no, he was brilliant, and he was 25 then. You thought you've got another 5, 6, 7 years. Colitis kind of hit him increasingly hard. Worth also saying that Hargreaves was still a Man United player around then, another one you would have killed for having this team, but of course
he was always broken.
Yeah, he last played at Chelsea and I think September, and was nowhere near. But the dream midfield would be Fletcher and Hargreaves and Carrick, really. Fletcher and Hargreaves just harassing the life out of Barcelona.
That makes it that is it a game that maybe goes to a penalty shootout again, and who knows? United triumphing that, we'll never know.
I've tried to find this interview, Rob, post Emirates with Ferguson. I can't find it. Just on Sky, just immediately after. The Chelsea-Barcelona game is in the balance. It's 0-0, and they play the second leg the following night. And like it's almost always the case, they're asked, who do you prefer? Who would you prefer in the final? And can't remember the verbatim because it's quite a few years ago, but it's something along the lines that Barcelona would be the kind of ideal finals, the final that people want. And the way he talked about it was as if he saw that as a very, very much a 50-50 game, and two footballing teams, i.e. two teams that want to put their foot in the ball and kind of dominate that. And I remember very, very viscerally being home thinking, well no, don't do that. That's mental. You're clearly now. The conversation we've just had, would he have had the tools to do the kind of job in Barcelona that he had just literally done at the Emirates? But even I, who knows very little, felt that seems to be the wrong way to approach this final, if it is indeed Barcelona. And players, and to be fair, in 2011, Ferguson did hint, which is as much of an admission as you get from him, that he got that wrong, and he went too far on the front foot. But it was just interesting then, immediately after, and it's not even confirmed as the final yet, that he's already thinking, and you and I have had this discussion again, you've just made that point, 2 Champions League wins, quite jammy. I think he wants the definitive final.
Yes, but I think there are different ways to achieve that. Like when Fergie talks, particularly about history, look under the sauce basically to make sure it's past there, is what I would say. He's very good at shaping his own history. And you could argue he did that by appointing David Moyes, but that's another story. I don't know about that interview because I was high as a kite. But what I would say is David Lacey in The Guardian wrote a pretty similar piece saying basically when all the hot air has subsided from Stamford Bridge, the world will be happy about having a dream final. So there was that perception. And maybe there's also a bit of a romantic in Ferguson. Maybe there's also not Chelsea are the kind of team who just grind you down. I mean, they were a brilliant, brilliant team, Chelsea, and should have won their semi-final, obviously. But it'd be quite kind of wearying to play against them. So maybe there was an element of that. But I totally agree with you that he did want his definitive triumph. I don't necessarily agree with you about how he wanted to achieve it, but we'll get to that.
Okay, the other semi-final then, Adam. Barcelona-Chelsea, again, two sides that have known each other relatively well over the last 5 or 6, 7 years. 0-0 in the Camp Nou, which again, pretty much a template of what United had done there the previous season. Your thoughts on that first leg?
Yeah, it was. I think we mentioned Chelsea-Liverpool earlier on, didn't we? In terms of continual games, etc. This was starting to have that little bit of a feel, even though we're so far removed from that Ronaldinho goal that we were talking about 4 or 5 years before, in terms of the players, etc. In terms of the game itself, again, one that you'll be a massive fan of. Barcelona maybe starting to, at this point, show some of that. Why maybe some of the pundits were talking about Arsenal light, because they were a little bit incensed. Can you be a little bit incensed? I don't think so, but incensed at the what they deemed to be overly aggressive play by Chelsea. Of course, if you're Chelsea and you're playing against these players, you want to get in there and get in their face and all that sort of stuff. So I don't really have a big issue with that. I think it was a great performance from Chelsea. I have to say, this is the first time that Barcelona hadn't scored at home this season at all, and I think you do whatever you need to do to try and get that back to Stamford Bridge. So I don't really have a big issue, but I can see both sides of it. Chelsea are going to go and be cynical, of course they are, but as we know, Barcelona are never short of saying that things should be played in football should be played in the right way, yada yada. I'm not a big fan of that either. I think we spoke earlier on. You do what you need to do to get the result that you want to do, and I don't think anybody can really argue that Chelsea got what they came for in this one, albeit not a classic.
David, more than enough to pick out of the second leg. I think it's fair to say 1-1 on the night. Michael Essien with a phenomenal strike that puts Chelsea ahead. And again, you see or there's a feeling that that's going to be the kind of outcome of the night. Barcelona slightly tepid. A lot of shots on goal. Chelsea absolutely battering them. We'll get to the penalties in a minute. Andrea Iniesta's goal, in the moment, in the context, incredible, passing it the way he did. Again, can you say a star is born has already won the Euros? But you know what I mean. There are question marks still over this Barcelona thing, and there was some maturity and steel, mental steel rather than physical necessarily with that brush of his foot.
Yeah, Iniesta had been to this stage, and it's again difficult with the hindsight. He had always been seen as sort of like Xavi's little mate. Robin to Xavi's back, because Xavi had that game against England. Rob, you'll remember, I think it was 2004, where he was just phenomenal, and the whole of English football came away going, we need to be able to do that. He was superb. So then, anytime you watch Sky, because Sky's coverage back then was still very incredibly England focused, on their opponents. Basically, they accepted that Real Madrid, Barca, and Bayern Munich were quite good. Juventus, maybe. At the time, they would say things like, "Oh, the Italians can defend well, as the Italians conceded 5, every game in the group stage." But Xavi was the one, right? And Iniesta was just seen as his wee mate. This was the first time that I really, really noticed a side who committed totally to the way they were playing and didn't change at all. And it's the thing that I remember about this game, even more so than the penalties, is being struck in the last 10 minutes and saying, why aren't they lumping it? Why aren't they getting guys into the box? They've got 5 minutes. They've got 3 minutes. They need a goal. They only need one. What are they doing? This is not a team who send a keeper up for a corner in the last minute. They kept doing what they did. And afterwards, Guardiola spoke about it, and he said, we believe in what we do. We believe it's the way to go. And I just thought, what balls? And again, now it's something that's much more common in football. I mean, Christ, teams do it suicidally. Russell Martin got himself sacked on the back of it. But back then, I remember thinking, what balls? Because, in British football, you play the way you want to play. But if you're a goal down with 5 minutes to go, everybody into the box and let's lump it, lads. That was what we did. Didn't matter what your style was. And I just thought, wow, imagine being so confident and committed to your playing style and knowing that and then getting that validation of it happening. I think this is a real point. It wasn't a turning point, Martin, because as you always point out with turning points are just signs that something has changed. It's just when you notice it. That for me was that where I went, right, okay, this is a bit different. And I was just so impressed with the calmness in their play. Not at the time, but when it works. And then and he said it doesn't matter if we're 2-0 down or 3-0 down or whatever. We play the same way because it's the way. But he had his team totally committed to that. They didn't force it either. That's the other thing you sometimes see where they, everything's a bit scruffy and they hadn't been good. They hadn't been anywhere near their fluent best. But they get
first
there.
shot on target.
There you go. Chelsea should have won this, but
we'll get to that.
We'll get to that. In the VAR era, Chelsea won this rather comfortably. But yeah, I must admit, the thing that stuck with me, as I say, was the total and utter belief that nope, we know what we're doing will work, and we just need to keep doing it. It's the 93rd minute. The timer's running out in a Champions League semi-final away from home against a team of these winning bastards. Because, this Chelsea team are hard. Even the guys we all talk about, the Terry, Drogba, Lampard. But Alex, the big hard bastard. That Chelsea team was full of them. And they still go, no, we're going to do this. And Iniesta pops up, and what a magical footballer he was. And then, of course, he gets the World Cup winning goal. And by the middle of the next season, but by the time they come back to England with that for the Champions League final that Rob was talking about earlier, 2011, we all know who they are, and we're all in awe of them. But this is the side that's rising to that.
Yeah, and one thing I think is interesting is that gamble. How much does that rely on logic, i.e. that the more you have the ball, the more tired the defence is going to be? This comes from a it's not a bad error for Messi, but it's an error he's not making in the 80th minute. But clearly so I looked in both games. Barcelona had 70% possession, which is not normal in that era, not normal at all. By way of example, in the final they had 53. Imagine the demands on your concentration for them just doing it again and again and again. Someone like Essien, who was a wonderful player, and it's kind of cruel that the goal he scored ultimately, it's not even, like, I wouldn't even blame him necessarily, but it's a clearance that he would nail 100 times out of 100 10 minutes earlier, I think. But it goes to whoever. Messi squares it, Iniesta scores. And so maybe there is an element of logic, but it still takes unbelievable balls to just say, no, we're going to keep doing that and wait for the mistake to happen, or wait for the just that one moment when someone slips slightly. Because Chelsea were as good as anyone in terms of defensive concentration.
Yes.
You cannot. It's like, I always feel like it's almost like a game of Tetris playing against a team like that. You can replay for as long as you like, but if the whistle, eventually it all ends one way. It's just whether you can get to the whistle, basically.
You can do it. I think that in terms of your thing about how much is it, belief that logic, I think there is an element of fanaticism in it. I think there has to be. I think you need total buy, because if there's any doubt whatsoever in the minds of the players, they will lump it. They will begin to force it. They'll try things. They'll try doing things that they don't normally do. You kind of need to maybe tip slightly into the illogical and tip slightly into the no. I think you need to be a zealot. I think you need to be a fundamentalist. But when you get your reward like this, you just believe it even more.
And there are times it doesn't work. You'll see that next season. But ultimately, it's going to work a hell of a lot more than it doesn't.
Yeah.
I think there's a logic piece, 100%. I completely agree with everything you said. You might, if they don't win, or if they don't get that goal, it's idealism being slaughtered, when really it's their pragmatism. I think
that's a good way of putting it.
What's the best way to do this? Why would we? Explain to me, why would I ping high balls into the box when Iniesta and Messi are against Alex and Terry? How is that logical? How is that the best way to succeed? Obviously, there could be second balls, all that sort of stuff, but that's not how they train. That's not how they play. So that is an inherent risk. So I think there's a pragmatism piece there. It's exactly the same as how often now do you see a team who's not good enough, or a team who's not great on the ball, playing out from the back, and they make a mistake and everybody says, what the fuck are you doing that for? Guardiola was the first person I remember saying, why would you not do that? Because even if you're a terrible team, 99 times out of 100, that ball is still going to the fullback. Whereas if I kick this ball long, it's at best a 50-50. My strikers might not be as good in the air as my defenders. So why would I not do that? That seems a bit strange. Obviously, the one time it doesn't work is the time that everybody sees, but nobody sees the other 99 times that a poor team plays the ball out from the back and it's fine. So I think there's a whole logical part of it as well, but it definitely comes down to what you as a team, as a coach, as a manager, deem as pragmatic for you. And I think there's a lot of sense in that. Yeah.
Talked about Ferguson's interview post-match. Didier Drogba had an interview post-match in a way to camera. He was incensed, and rightly so, for all the platitudes that I completely agree with. That Barcelona played the smart hand. They should not have won this game. The refereeing was outrageous. I think it was very inexperienced that he admitted. I think when the two met a few years later, he effectively admitted he got them wrong. Rob, you've watched this game back for VAR purposes. You dispute some of the collisions in the box, but the handballs are, again, I'm very much on record here. It's judgment. It's not binary. However, how many do you need to give? If I was a player on that part with a blue jersey, and I count myself as quite a good temperament and quite rational, I would have lost my shit. And it's what do you make of it? Give me your scorecard.
So I went to Stockley Park to watch them all. So no, I just thought it'd be interesting to look at them through the current kind of clear and obvious thing. So there's one when Malouda turns inside. I think it's Alves who fouls him right on the line. Now, my feeling is that once you give the foul, it's probably inside the box, but I don't think that will be overturned. I don't think that's clear and obvious, personally. The two handballs, I think, unless I'm misremembering the kind of the criteria for judging handball at the time, which probably didn't allow you to have your basically the star jump like the one that Balak's. But even Piqué's another one. Someone flicks it around him, and now he doesn't move his arm to the ball. To be fair, but it's
it's
yeah.
The Balak one
definitely. The Balak one's funny because that's what, but people think that's at 1-1, so Chelsea still have a chance.
Exactly. I mean, and
even though Iniesta scored in injury time, and then when Balak starts doing like YMCA or something, I don't even know what he's doing. He just throws his hands. I should because I remember vividly watching it with a mate, and my heart sank a little bit when Iniesta scored because I'd seen them win 6-2 at Real Madrid, and
they were.
There were still doubts, definitely, because everyone talks about the defense and everything else, and they had Dani Alves and Abadal, the fullback, suspended. Abadal was sent off, of course, so they didn't get every decision, but it was probably a fair one. But yeah, I mean, the two handballs. I don't know what you think about the actual leg on leg fouls.
Seen them given.
Probably are penalties, but they probably wouldn't be given now in terms of being overturned. That's all.
Yeah, I think
Henry should have had a penalty in the first leg anyway. So stop your moaning and get on with it.
I think that the odds of all of them going one way, I think Chelsea would really. But no, I mean the handball one, I think it's a penalty.
Especially after 1-1, especially after that, you think the game has been ended, and then it is star jumps. I would have lost the plot. However, that is football. You win. You get the breaks. Barcelona get the breaks on that night. They made the most. They will now get the breaks the following season.
Before we get to the final, I would like to point out that having sat next to Mr. Martin Ramsay during Rangers versus Bayer Leverkusen in the Europa League semi-final, the phrase "I like to think I'm quite a calm and logical person,"
relative to those around me, I think it was. Adam, run me through. We're going to Rome now. We're in the final eventually. The Barcelona team on the night, and in 20,000 words or less, can you tell me how different they are to the current Pep iteration with City? Because this is quite the evolution over time, or is it?
Yeah, it completely is. Yeah, I know we spoke about that in the last show or a few shows ago now. To be honest, this is, for me, I think the peak of what you would class as that Johan Cruyff version of positional play. I think the great thing, I think, about Guardiola, as I've said many times here, is that evolution throughout. What have I got at my disposal? What am I going to do? He moves to Bayern, and he's got two fantastic wingers that maybe don't play in the same way that he's played with Barcelona. He adapts, he evolves. Philip Lahm, there's nobody on this planet that would have turned Philip Lahm into that defensive midfielder that he did there, and he was the best in the world in 3 positions, I think, at one point, which he has attributed huge amounts to Guardiola. There's just so many examples of it. I think winning the league with Fabian Delph at left back, was it for Man City as well? Just these ridiculous things that he's like, here's a player, here's just had that unique ability to recognise strengths in players and put them in positions where everybody else is like, what are you doing? Kevin De Bruyne and David Silva as well, that, well, let's make them central midfielders, when again that wasn't a thing at all. We'll move them from the wings, and we'll not even make them a 10, we'll literally make them a pair of central midfielders. Just things that wouldn't even have been possible 3 or 4 years ago, or nobody would even have thought. But I think that the big part of that, I think, is he didn't necessarily have a single mentor. How much have we spoke in the early shows, Martin, David, about Cruyff and the ideologue in him, and it was Venus Michel's "This Is My Way or the Highway." Arrigo Sacchi comes along and blows it out the water, and then he gets blown out the water as well, because they are so one-dimensional. I guess it's great, but it's absolutely not consistent, and you can't deal with it. Guardiola has done what you think would be sensible, and he's basically synthesized influences from a lot of different coaches into that philosophy. Marcelo Bielsa was huge for him as well. We know, obviously, Johan Cruyff. You kind of think they're both similar, but they're not particularly in terms of those setups. He went to Brescia and he had Carlo Mazzoni there as his coach there, and he taught him completely different things. He'd never played in a team like that, for example, in that type of league. So he taught him what it was like to not have the ball, how you win the ball back, all those sort of things, the respect for organising a defence, which again wasn't necessarily something that he'd have had to do too much of at Barcelona. Even Rijkaard, he coached Rijkaard as an influence as well, which not many people might think, but he coached Rijkaard as an influence because of his bravery in putting in Messi. Now again, you can say, oh, you've got Messi in your academy. You still need to do it. Like you still have to be the guy who does it. And he says that was a key factor when he took over, his bravery there to say, maybe I will put Busquets and Pedro in. Maybe that's fine. Maybe I'll bring Xavi back a little bit and we'll work on that, because Rijkaard sort of set the path. So I think all of that stuff, all these influences, even Van Gaal in terms of how rigid things would be. We spoke again about you can only be in this area of the pitch, and you can't have more than two players on a vertical line, because you must have this balance, you must have the layering. That's all Van Gaal stuff, 100%. That's all Van Gaal stuff. So there's this whole philosophy that is created by taking the bits from other people and evolving them constantly. And I think you can't. It's inaccurate to say it's the same thing over and over again. The overriding change, I think, for me, from what we see now with Man City, particularly in the last couple of years, versus what we see there, is just the sheer physicality of it. But that is the same football wide. You look at the players now and the size of them. 6'4", 6'5" is not a rarity anymore. It's kind of bog standard, and they can all play. Those type of players that we all know now, Nathan Ake, who he sort of transformed at City, even Guardiola as well coming in there. Those type of players are not the defenders he would have had. He was probably more idealistic in his Barcelona stage than he is now. 100%. He'd be moving Mascherano back, because again, that's something that Cruyff would do. Let's bring a centre back here. He neglected the defence, I think, at times, and it's easy to remember in this Stamford Bridge game. He's pretty much playing with Piqué and Yaya Toure at centre half, because it was that total football thing. I'm not bothered about the defence. It's fine. We'll keep the ball. They won't do anything. But very, very quickly that evolved. Maybe it's going to Germany and then obviously moved on to the Premier League. You have to. So it is very, very different. I think, I don't know if I've made that under 20,000 words or not, but I'll just carry on. It is very, very different. I think you see the lineup that is in this final, and you sort of see it's all technical. There's all ball players. The only real physicality that you've got is, or the sort of old-fashioned physicality, I think, is probably Yaya Toure, Puyol, Piqué. Yeah, fair enough, but he's not exactly a big strapping centre half in that sense. So it's all about the ball players and all about getting them on the same pitch. And I think that probably sums up his approach.
Can't dismiss Henry and Eto'o's physicality though, because just the power. I mean, I know it's a very different way, but the absolute power in the running, both the goal. Henry has a brilliant effort in the second half, and he just seems to move away so gracefully but so powerfully from his marker. Adam, we talked about what United are missing in their inability to have Anderson, Fletcher, and Carrick. But Barcelona have lost two very good fullbacks. How big a drama was that for Guardiola to deal with?
Well, I guess not really, because again, it's how obviously you'll miss specific players, but there's a role there. It's how we want to play. He's not going to deviate from that. So in essence, there will
we
be
wrote a
players
lot of poetry about Dani Alves a couple of weeks ago, right? And how
we
important
did.
he was.
We did, but yeah, I think it's one of those things we spoke about. You'll miss Dani Alves and you'll miss Messi. They will give you that. They'll give you that star quality. They'll be game breakers, if you like, if you want to use that phrase. But he's certainly got enough there to cope. For me, I'd be really keen to get Rob's thoughts on this, because we spoke about the Fletcher thing, and I think we do that quite a bit. We think they missed that player. If that player was there, then great. I agree with that in this occasion, but I think it's who comes in. I don't think Giggs has a great game at all. I really don't. It's
what
more
the
of
other
a
options there?
no. I know it's more of a 4-4-2. He sort of gets caught between two stools. Is there maybe a little bit of Ferguson at this stage still thinking they're going to play 4-3-3? They've got lots of little guys. Let me go British 4-4-2, and we'll just hammer down the sides and it'll be fine. And then they get swamped in the middle of the park. He says the quote I was mentioning before, that famous quote about they get you on that carousel and they make you dizzy. Just the boom, boom, boom with the short passing. Maybe I wouldn't have went 4-4-2 against them 100%, but lack of options possibly, yeah.
Well, he switched a lot. United became more and more desperate. I mean, I would argue the starting formation is 4-2-3-1 with Giggs on Busquets, but the point is the same, because Giggs' discipline was never that great, particularly when he played as a sort of number 10. But I think what really got them was it's only after about 5 minutes, Messi and Eto'o switch. So Messi starts wide right and Eto'o up front. Then they switch. Now, Ferguson says this is because Evra was causing him problems, which might be true. It actually stands up. You know, United had a lot of early joy down the left. Messi didn't bother getting back. It's actually commented on by Andy Gray, I think, on commentary. But then Messi drops in and suddenly it's 4v3 and at times 4v2. And I feel really sorry for Carrick in this game for all kinds of reasons. I mean, the option he might have taken, so what worked the previous years at home was to play Tevez where Giggs played in this game, because he's so much more mobile and he'll just harass Busquets and so on. But the issue with that is that, like I said, it pissed him off. And Tevez actually plays well when he comes on at half time, which is one of the desperate moves. The other thing is to remember where Giggs was at the time. This is the year when he got his kind of Lifetime Achievement Award.
He's
and he played, do you remember they beat Chelsea 3-0 at home in January? And he was fantastic, albeit from a deeper position, playing as a kind of where Anderson played effectively. So I think there are so many. Look, I think Barcelona would have won this game 9 times out of 10, 8 times out of 10. But there are so many what ifs for United, not least that Giggs had a bug apparently. Carrick had a broken toe, definitely. Ferdinand wasn't fully fit, but against that, Iniesta was a doubt. You know, Henry was a doubt. I think Ferguson. I think the bigger problem actually, Ferguson. He went too soon at half time. He brings off Anderson and brings on Tevez. Anderson had a great game, but he moves Giggs back into midfield. Giggs is disciplined. Like, for all the jokes about Paul Scholes' tackling, rightly, and he should be sent off in this for trying to butcher someone when he eventually comes on. But his positional discipline was pretty good. There was the famous bit in 07-08 when they beat Barcelona about Queiroz and the gym mats, you know, never be this further apart than this, between Carrick and Scholes. Well, in the second half, Giggs is like Carrick's just on his own, basically, on the burning deck. So that's the problem. I'm fascinated by this game because I do think United are okay at half time. They beat, Barcelona are a better team, but Van der Sar doesn't make a save in the first half. I think it goes too soon, and then Barcelona come out and they could score twice really early on. Then United have a good spell. Second goal kills it, and then it's a humiliation. But the other point I want to make is that I don't think it is a humiliation now. At the time, it was written as such by some people, but I think that's because in 2009 it kind of was, but we would see 2 years later that was a real humiliation. United, I think, it bugs me a lot that these games are bracketed as a pair, these two finals, because 2009 was winnable, definitely. 2011, Ferguson could have done anything, but any combination of players in his squad, any tactics, he could have had any, the most sophisticated tacticians ever, and I won't name them, on his team, and then lost. 2009, when I said 9 out of 10, I think it's probably closer to like 7.5 out of 10. I'd love to see what you would think about this, but just one quick thing. I think he wanted his defining triumph, but I think his template was the 94 final. So score first and then let them fucking piss around and pick them off and hammer them. I don't think he wanted to outplay them. I don't think he was that naive. Like, he's not a fucking idiot. And also look at the team he picked. It was a team full of workers again. You know, Berbatov's on the bench, Rooney's playing wide left. It was all about, and that's why they start so ferociously, and they do. For 9 minutes, they are, and I know it sounds absurd, they are absolutely brilliant. And suddenly, like that, literally Barcelona's first decent attack, they score. And before you know it, United are in an unusual position, but more to the point, Barcelona are just so empowered. And before you know it, it's just pass.
But that's where it comes to. I think you're spot on. That's where things come down to key moments, because I totally agree. In the first half, it's Barcelona, like you said, it's their only shot on target that they score with. Man United in that first half actually had a little look there, had 8 shots, only 1 on target themselves, fair enough, but they had 8 compared to Barcelona's 4.
That first 10 minutes, Ronaldo is on one because he knows he's playing for the club. So he has this free kick, another wobbler from miles out. Valdez can't hold it. Park's about to score when Piqué makes an amazing challenge. Then Ronaldo hooks this volley just wide from a really difficult position. But they are all over them. And then suddenly, what I'm fascinated by is details, right? This goal, 4 players make mistakes of varying degrees. None of them are howlers, but they all contribute to the goal. Carrick, Anderson, Vidic, and Van der Sar. And before you know it, the mood has changed totally, because Barcelona, who were nervous, just suddenly start, we're 1 up now, we'll just start passing it. And before you know it, totally different. I struggle to remember a game where the mood was changed that much by a goal that early.
Yeah.
It just flips totally on its head. And United suddenly look doubtful and desperate. And they have their moments, but the thing that really stood out for me is that they don't snatch at chances. They snatch at chances to create chances.
Yeah, it's bad decision making. Yeah,
and it's the ball onto Rooney in a really good position, the right side of the box, and he just fucking overhit. It's routine for him. And
this is so odd, Rob.
They're confronted by something they didn't know existed, I think.
Yeah, something spooks them, and it's daft to. I don't think it can't just be the goal, but it seems to be because they start well. They start really well.
One thing is that Messi, I don't think, had played much centre forward at this point, if at all. And suddenly he is. So suddenly you've got this triangle of Busquets, Iniesta, Xavi, and Messi. And Fernando and Vidic are like, what are we doing? We're just marking each other.
The space he got was, I was watching the game back, the space he gets is just insane. Yeah,
it wouldn't happen now or 5 years later.
It's beautiful to watch. The amount of times, what I love, the amount of times they do, I noticed this is, so someone, Iniesta will play it to Messi, a short pass, but it's purely designed to draw Park towards Messi. Messi immediately, without stopping, gives it back, and then Parker's gone, so Iniesta plays it out wide. Silvino is now in space. It's just beautiful to watch. We're not
constant.
But there's still margins as well. I think, David, I was going to ask you your thoughts on this. There's still margins, because we mentioned Ronaldo in the previous rounds having a goal from 40 yards. He has a goal in this game as well. But then the free kick as well, David. We spoke about a free kick. Valdez makes a meal of that, and Park almost probably he gets there, but it's a good tackle. So again,
I'd credit Piqué for that.
Brilliant tackle.
But
it's margins, and had United managed to get one, it might be different, because Rob's point, I think, is so accurate. This United team, one of its great strengths, I think, was its decision making, right? Because anyone can miss a chance, but it was so rare to see United miss so many opportunities to create the chance. Usually the decision making in the final third was because let's look at the players that they've got. These are really tough. And like I say, anyone can, force a good save or put it over the bar. But they weren't even getting to those positions. Yet when you look back at it now calmly, there's Rob, 6, 7 times you think, choose the right pass and you're in here.
Yeah, and it's a variety of players as well. Rooney, Giggs, Carrick, they're all doing it really. And Ronaldo's making wrong decisions because he wants to,
Ronaldo is the first in a series. The sequel would be Steven Gerrard against Chelsea after the slip, where I am playing here for myself and I am going to score a goal and I'm going to do something spectacular in Ronaldo's case because he's leaving Gerrard's to make up for the mistake. But I think Barcelona bewitch United a little bit in this match. I think tactically, their ability, and United are sort of all looking around at each other, as you say, and that bleeds into 2 years later when United turn up and go, Oh Christ! And you can see it. You can physically see the way that they're not themselves. They don't play like United in this match, and the effort's there, the work rate's there, but there's a gulf between these two sides, and bigger than it should have been.
Yeah, we've never come up against it before. These are so much better than we realize. Because I think there was an element of thinking that they were kind of just a deluxe Arsenal.
And how crystallized this is with the Messi dissing pretty much constantly all that time, hasn't really scored against an English club, and he does so with a header, and what a header, Adam. I mean, he's almost fucking 40 degrees back. You forget how difficult that is, and I think that just typifies exactly that dismissive nature of Barcelona. And all this hype and all this, but what have they kind of really done? And we found out that night.
They almost reversed.
But I don't want to criticize that too much, because you need to see it. You need to see it in action. You need to have that night in Rome before you say, well, fair enough. There were others who could foresee that and say, well, actually, this team really are the real deal. But that general public, especially again when you've got 3 English teams in the semis again, these guys are pretenders until they're not, though, right?
Yeah, just very good. And I think also how fortunate they've been against Chelsea really fed into that, certainly in the British. I remember, I forget who it was now, but someone on Football Weekly at the Guardian at the time said they thought United would win 3-0, and that wasn't outlandish. It was seen as slightly kind of extreme, but it wasn't seen as that.
It was common, I think. It genuinely was common. I thought it was absolutely wild. Adam, how big a deal was this victory? We do deep dives here. We get into detail, but we also look at the wider picture. That's one of the joys of doing this show. As I said, David said, I don't like turning points because I think things are already in motion. It's just basically saying this has changed, by the way, just so you know. But how definitive a staging post was this in football history?
I think it's undeniable. To be honest, I think it's huge for Barcelona. They coveted this, as we know, for a long time. Getting this victory again, this is the point now. They win the league. They can afford to only win one of their last 6, I think it was, in La Liga. In sort of preparation for coming up to this game, so everything is geared for it. Getting through, like you said, you just need to get through that semi-final when it's that bad tempered as well. I think that'll probably give them a bit of confidence, because to an extent we can argue refereeing decisions, but they've sort of stood up to those things. It is the 2 top teams in the continent. I think it's the final that I certainly wanted, and I think the way that they do it, I think will probably give them a bit of satisfaction as well, because yes, we'll look at it from a negative Manchester United angle as well, but Rob mentioned it earlier on. It was something that I knew happened, but I hadn't really thought of the logic of it. You think even that first goal, swapping Messi and Eto'o just completely changes the angles, changes the avenues of the attack. Mm-hmm. A Man United team that are already struggling to deal with the midfield are now thinking, fuck, they've just changed this as well. Messi doesn't score that goal that Eto'o scores, because Eto'o comes in off that right-hand side, and I think he surprises, maybe not surprises Van der Sar, but...
No, he does. I think he does.
He does.
Because he
and it's so hard. He's so hard as well.
Yeah, he takes it with his right foot. He didn't look like he was balanced with his right foot. Just those little details, I think, must spook them, because Messi's coming in off the wing and curling it in with his left foot. Footballers are human. I know you see the player there and stuff, but you're thinking, I imagine, in training, this guy's going to come in off his the left-hand side and ping these all every time, every single time. So I want to be maybe looking at my near post, but I kind of like to be thinking about going that way as well. And then they change it, and in that split second, Eto'o gets forward and barrels through and scores it. So I think there's just those little details as well that, yes, we'll get a bit of space in behind Evra that maybe Messi wasn't having, because Evra would be sort of one-on-one confrontational, whereas Eto'o will go in behind. So just these little details, I think, that just pick it through. Again, with the second goal as well, I mean, the header gets the praise and it is fantastic, but
what a ball.
They've taken them. but they've taken it really quickly. They've taken United by surprise. Ferdinand is under it, wrong side. Ronaldo, I think that challenges Piqué, and it is a foul. I think he's a little bit Puyol, sorry, to lose the free kick. He's a little bit late, but it's just that quick thinking, that ingenuity. I'm going to ping this ball in the box. Why? Again, we talk about logic. There's no logic to that from Xavi's point of view. Why are you doing that when Messi is, as far as you can see, behind Rio Ferdinand and being marked, but the ball is perfect and he jumps 10 foot in the air, like I said earlier on, and it's a terrific finish. So I think all the ways that it sort of contrived to work, probably gave them the platform. Certainly, I'm sure it gave Guardiola the confidence in the summer to go and make some big moves that possibly didn't work, but that's sort of by the by. And yeah, I think it is huge for them because the style of play thing we speak about all the time is massive for Barcelona. To go and do that, a theme has been throughout these shows how difficult it is to win a league and win the Champions League at the same time. To do it in that way, with that style, with that philosophy, with a manager who was the B team coach the year before, players that were in the B team and hadn't been seen, selling your big players, etc. I think the whole smorgasbord of it, to use a horrendous word, just makes it very, very Barcelona and very on point. So it's a decisive thing for them, 100%. It's them.
I think it enhances rather than creates a legend, in as much as
even
if United win this game, Barcelona are coming. You're not going to stop them. Guardiola's not going to change. But this validates, this validates it the first time, and its first season playing football we'd never seen before.
We'll come to it in a couple of years, but United at Wembley that night, if they'd been further back, they'd been taking pictures behind the goal.
Right.
It was just
Wembley Arena for most of the first half.
Most ridiculous night. How many finals have we covered on this series? I don't know if there's any as consequential. It's kind of weird that the two goals. I mean, the Etu one is quite chaotic, and there's a bit of a
punt and a header.
Not quite pin. Absolutely, because it shows
the best thing to do in this situation.
I think it's exactly that. This was a side who had a way of playing, but the way that they were playing could create a lot of. We mentioned, Arsenal throughout this year that we've been covering. They kind of had a specific way to score goals. They didn't have scrappier goals. Barcelona didn't mind that, although I would argue that the finish for the second elevates it. It's just different. It's just something that, and this is the thing, that Adam mentioned at the start about Pep not being an ideologue, and in a sense he isn't, because he wouldn't say his players don't cross the ball in if it's on. Of course he would. And he wouldn't say to Messi, don't run in at the box and see if you can get in the end of that if it's on. It's just about a basic framework. Not basic, it's quite complicated. I mean, there's a story Thomas Muller tells about Bayern players in the first 3 months going home in tears because they just didn't. He said we couldn't get it. It was so difficult. Then it clicked and it was like, this is the most natural thing in the world. But once, within that framework, I suppose I'm saying, within those parameters, he does give them a bit of space and a bit of, it's not purely automatisms. It's based on that, but how could it be purely automatisms when you have Lionel Messi on the side?
Indeed. Thank you, gentlemen. If listeners, if you can think of a final more impactful, consequential, please put it in the thread. Just picking up on a previous thread, I think after the last final we did on Van der Sar, and someone saying they couldn't believe he'd been picked up by Fulham and it was a bit of a disgrace. People forget how bad he left Juventus. He was in a bad. His career looked finished, and the rehabilitation started at Fulham, and United was this very well deserved and nice to see kind of swan song at the end. Sorry, Rob, you got one last
point. It's about the two holding midfielders. Sergio Busquets was 20 years old that night.
Yeah, I know,
and he just looked so good. And Carrick went into a deep depression for 2 years. He said it in his autobiography, which was written like 2018. He said he basically has never got over that final, and particularly the loose header. And it's only that, a loose header, but he was left so alone, basically.
Yeah.
Anderson
Yeah.
Got so sorry because he's confronted by kind of three superior versions of himself. Busquets is a holding player, plus Xavi and Iniesta, and he's got to deal with them all on his own, and he's got that little bastard swimming around him from behind. It's just not fair. But
that's it. It's not fair. And too many United players, I think that night, were looking around and saying, "What the hell is going on here?"
Yeah, he took in his own head. He was scapegoating really unfairly, and it took him 2 years to recover, but he did eventually.
He was always the one that seemed to pick up criticism, and I think it's because in Britain we like our midfielders who run like hell and thump into tackles. And Michael Carrick wasn't that. He was elegant, he was calm, he was control, he was beautiful at setting the tempo, the ebb and flow of the game. Something that Keane did for United, but he had all, the rest of it that people would notice and like, the fiery thing. Fire and ice, basically. And in Britain, we tend to prefer the fire.
Yeah.
We certainly do. The start then of the Pep Guardiola era in European football. The end of Ronaldo at Manchester United. He will be in Madrid next season. Gentlemen, not just tonight or this episode, but last week's as well. I have really enjoyed being part of podcast discussion as much as that's been a really good season to get into. Thank you, Rob.
Thank you. Apologies for talking far too much, but it was great fun.
Oh, it's quite all right. We're doing well with these new 45-minute episodes. Thanks, Adam.
Yeah, that's my fault.
Real Madrid, what a sad little life. Thank you.
Rob, firstly, thank you for coming on. Secondly, you're here to talk. Don't apologise for it. And thirdly, no, it's not your fault. It's Mr. Pep Guardiola's PR machine sitting there in the corner, the unrepentant Adam Thornton, who loved it. Adam has sat for what, 40 odd episodes.
Yeah, he's been
purely.
Well, he got his Ajax. He got his Ajax.
He got his Ajax. Ajax warmed him up a bit. Yeah, that's fair.
Wait till 10-11.
Yeah, exactly.
Before this 2008 run, Martin said to me and David, "This might be 3 shows. This one, I think this could be 6. So we'll see you all in springtime."
Cheers, Davey.
Pleasure. I'm like you. I loved this. I hope the listener. I'm sure they will.
It was good, but it's not going to be as good as the next time. It's 9-10 and that fucking volcano, and justice finally served. We'll see you then. Until then, bye for now. If you enjoyed the show and want to help us grow, please remember to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. On YouTube, search for And It's Live Podcast. We've got new deep dives, drafts and breakdowns dropping every other day.